Hey Grace Church, Michael Campbell here. Hey, we are going over this Sunday's Bible story that the kiddos are going to be working through. And the story is Jesus walking on water. So how does this apply to them and how we can lead them as parents, but also how do we take this story, apply it to ourselves, and use that as a way to lead our children? Because as always, the church and what we're doing here in the kids ministry is just supplemental to what we are doing at home, because the parents, the guardians are the primary discipleship makers of the home. So the story is, last week we learned about Jesus feeding the over 5,000 people. And so Jesus immediately leaves them. He's done, he did that miracle, but now he's on his way to Sea of Galilee. And it's such a cool story because he's like, hey, disciples, you guys go, leave the crowd. I have to be alone. And this is, the first part of the story I want us to take away is the intentionality that Jesus has with getting away and praying and meditating. That's a discipline I think we all need to do. So that's happening. Jesus goes away and the disciples go into the middle of the sea. Typically they would be like, within a mile of the shoreline, but this says they went into the middle of the sea. And I know I talked about it before, but the Sea of Galilee, when it would have waves crashing like crazy, that's because it's 700 feet below sea level. So all of the mountains, the cold air from the mountains would swoop down, and then the warm air from the sea would just immediately cause the waves to happen. So they're middle of a storm, and it's 3 to 6 a.m., somewhere in that time frame. And then Jesus is walking, and they see it. So it's not like Jesus is walking to the boat, which I think is a common misrepresentation. He's walking almost as if it's side by side the boat, and he's like, I wonder if they're gonna see me walking. So the disciples are like, is that Jesus walking next to a boat in the middle of the ocean 3 to 6 a.m.? And it is. So Peter was like, it looks like a ghost, but they're like, hey, is that you? And then Jesus is like, I am, which that he references, Exodus, where he's like, I am, saying that he is God himself. And not just that he is God of everyone, but as always, he's the God of everything, and all of nature even bows down to God and Jesus. So he has control over all of that. So he is walking on water. And Peter's like, if it's really you, call me out that I can walk on the water too. And Jesus is like, go for it. So Jesus steps out of the boat in the middle of the ocean, middle of the sea, and he starts walking towards Jesus, and because he's focused on him. And then all of the distractions and the fear, anxieties that come along with that start playing in Peter's head, and he turns and he looks at the waves, and at that point he falls in and he says, Lord, save me. And Jesus picks him up, brings him onto the boat, and immediately they get back to the sea, which is another miracle that I think, because they were in the middle of the sea, Jesus walked on water, and then as soon as that's finished, immediately they're back on the sea. So it's another miracle that I think gets overlooked. But something that I want to take away is our focus on Jesus. We need to stay focused on him within our lives. And there's anxieties and stress that allows us to fall at times. But we need to not just keep Jesus first in our life, he actually needs to be the center of life. So everything, family, work, friendship, ministry, church, all needs to be centered around Jesus and focused on him. So hopefully we could take away some of that from the story. But here are 3 quick things that you can talk to your children about with the story's lesson that can kind of help that conversation along. The first question to ask your children: what do you do when you feel afraid? Second question is, how do you feel knowing God's Spirit is always with you? How do you feel knowing God's Spirit is always with you? And the last question, what can you do when you start to doubt God? And this is a very healthy thing to do. There's questioning within the Christian's faith. I mean, even the psalmist questions God at times, but it's a way to grow and stretch and deepen your faith. So hopefully the story helps you do that and focus on Jesus more, and helps the conversations go with your children. But until next week, God bless and take care.